Conspiracy theories about the death of Charlie Kirk have been exploding online.
Israel will kill him.
The martyr, Charlie Kirk.
There have been more than 2 million distinct posts in the last week on X or Twitter referencing these conspiracy theories.
Because a lot of this is happening. A lot of these conspiracy theories are really being promoted on social media and channels like Discord.
Actually, twice as many posts as there were after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump last summer. Think about that. Some left-wing figures have been pushing the unhinged theory that Donald Trump himself orchestrated the killing to distract from the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
I'm not given to wild, unsupported statements.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Well, I'm here to help you navigate through the minefield of disinformation. I happen to be allergic to conspiracy theories. In this analysis, we're going to look again at the mischief of inference. A lot of people are inferring incorrectly, are following the cues of often opportunistic and mischievous creators, and are making inferences that are incorrect. So this analysis is essentially a part 2 to the original analysis I did on Look Closer. By the way, I got about 2,500 comments in that video and just this single super chat from Victoria. Victoria, thank you very much for your support. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, interesting, meaningful, important, please do hit the thanks button. Remember, this is essentially a true crime story. And again, in order to navigate it, don't you want to be in the hands of someone who is telling the truth, someone who's authentic, someone who stands for justice and authenticity and also credibility? Well, with that out of the way, let's get started. So some new footage has emerged of Tyler Robinson at a traffic stop. I think it's about 3 years old. We'll deal with that in a bit more detail, but it is interesting how calm he is and also the dress code that he has during that particular stop. Another image of Tyler has been released of him apparently at a Dairy Queen. What inferences do we draw from that? What can we tell about this image? Now, contextually, we want to know where and when this image was taken, but more important is the source. Where does this come from and who provided it? This last aspect tends to be the issue most or least interested in. So let's not just assume that this image is legit and that it was taken on the night of the incident at 6:38 p.m. at a Dairy Queen in Orem. Let's start by drawing a few inferences. Do we ever see him in the same maroon type shirt? You'll also notice the Dairy Queen image shows a man without a watch, but his physique appears to be a little less skinny than the one taken from his apartment. And he did seem to be wearing that color shirt earlier that day. But if the shirt looks right, the cap looks wrong, certainly the color, doesn't it? The shoes are just unclear. Now let's ask a similar question we asked about the rifle in part 1, but we want to frame it differently. Is the Dairy Queen image genuine? Number 1, yes. 2, no. 3, maybe. If the image is real, what does it mean? We'll circle back to this image and its implications at the end of this analysis. I also want to address the question that I asked in part 1, 2, or 3. What is the right answer there? We'll deal with that at the end of this analysis. Now let's examine how our brains are wired to make inferences based on limited information. And that's always what a conspiracy is, limited information. Of course, when we're dealing with an investigation, certainly at this stage of it, we also have limited information. So how do we prevent ourselves from going off track? Well, look at this article from Vox. Reality is constructed by your brain. Here's what that means and why it matters. So is reality reality, or is your brain telling you what reality is? Now, the key to inference is intuition, but intuitions need to be anchored in reality, not beliefs, right? There's a saying, seeing is believing, but in a real sense, the way our brains work is that believing is seeing. We see what we believe. And this is something that mischievous people take advantage of. So how good would you say are your perceptions, intuitions, and inferences? Well, remember we looked at this grid and we asked whether at first glance the squares on various levels are of different sizes. Well, just because they look as though they're on different sizes doesn't mean they are. When you look closer and when you bring a ruler or use straight lines, you can actually see that despite the impression you have, the reality is that they are actually straight lines. Now, opportunists take advantage of the fact that you see things in a skewed way and don't check whether it is true or not. And this is why we need to be more careful. And obviously, because you sometimes see things in a certain way, you think you can get an answer much quicker. And obviously, when you check and make sure, it's a longer process, and you also end up second-guessing yourself and feeling less confident. And obviously, all of those things make you feel less good, less confident about your ability to discern, all of which isn't very good for popularity or something going viral. Let's try another exercise, pattern recognition. Do you see a pattern in the circles at 3A? You should. Okay, now how about 3B? Well, what's going on there? Why can't you now? Now let's look at a third and final exercise. Look closely. Now, do you know those circles aren't actually moving? It's your mind that actually makes them move. And so what I didn't emphasize much in part 1 is this idea of carrying a towel. If we are preoccupied with trying to see the rifle, we miss the part that we can see the towel. And the towel is acknowledged in the official police narrative as well as in his narrative via text. And yes, we will be dealing with the question of authenticity around that issue in part 3. True crime is a unique arena where people come together and argue about evidence. It's quite interesting. Sometimes two groups can emerge. They can see the same evidence. Sometimes it's video footage. Sometimes it's screen grab or whatever. Sometimes it's just literally the facts of the case, and they can see completely different things. When faced with the fabric of a case, they can see completely different things. And that's why I say it's not about seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. And this is why you've actually got to challenge your own beliefs. Leave them out of it. Let the evidence guide you, not let your beliefs guide you. And this is the other thing that's key to conspiracy theories. It's always within a belief system that the evidence is used to support it, not the other way around. Here's an example. If I tell you that this is a rabbit, you see a rabbit. But if I told you it's actually a duck, well, what is it, objectively speaking? We don't see what is there, we see what we believe is there, and there's a difference. Psychologists refer to this disconnect with reality as cognitive bias. The real talent, the real trick isn't seeing one or the other, but seeing both and maintaining the awareness that both perspectives are possible. In other words, not where someone says, well, if the question is yes, no, or maybe, not saying yes, no, it's definitely yes, or no, it's definitely no. It's, oh, I can see both possibilities, maybe. And then when you get more information, you move the dial one way or the other, not based on your beliefs, but based on the evidence. Have a look at what happens when you change your perspective in this optical illusion. First, look at the pink dots. Now look at the cross, the plus sign in the middle, and you'll notice that the dots start turning green, where they turn invisible. Now, most people are not only incapable of a different perspective, but they insist that their perspective is the only perspective. You might think that that kind of confidence shows an intelligent person. Well, that's really the difference between average intelligence and insight. The difference between seeing something and discernment. The difference between knowledge and power. It's this idea of being able to keep two ideas in your mind at the same time. And then over time, with real knowledge, being able to gravitate to the one that is actually real, that is actually true. And so when I asked you, is the alleged shooter carrying a gun? What did you answer? Yes, no, or maybe. If you answered maybe either the first or the second time, it means you are capable of changing your perspective, which is a sign of intelligence, not a sign of a lack of intelligence. The same question applies to the legitimacy of the Dairy Queen image. Yes, no, maybe. Well, we need more information to be absolutely certain. Now, if you answered maybe either the first or the second time, it means you're capable of changing your perspective, which is a sign of intelligence, not a sign of a lack of intelligence. AI, which is updating its perspective constantly, seems to agree, and it's in this area that AI has a huge advantage over us. AI is reflective and adaptive in its thinking, whereas humans are far more inclined to be stuck, rigid, and we are often so sure that that stuckness is a good thing. Look at this. AI overview. Changing your perspective is widely considered a significant sign of intelligence, reflecting intellectual humility, adaptability, and, so important, an open mind, curiosity. This ability allows individuals to evolve their thinking in response to new information and circumstances, which is a core component of true intelligence according to figures like Albert Einstein. Now, in terms of the practical reality of this case, I want to try and change your perspective regarding this idea of the towel. I think a lot of you will say, no, I really don't think that is likely. Wow, was he using the towel to camouflage such a big weapon? Well, in the movie Heat, there's a scene where the robbers emerge from the bank, basically with the guns just under their coat. And the part that sticks out is just the end of it, the barrel. And why does nobody notice that? Well, because the jackets, in this case, are covering most of that end, and people just aren't really paying attention, that people aren't really looking for that sort of thing in a situation like that. If you're not convinced, I will be dealing with that in a bit more detail, but just think about dramatization and how they go into the bank with these weapons without actually being seen. And your ability to discern, isn't it much like the people in the bank and the people outside the bank? Coming back to that image from the Dairy Queen, the same thing applies to that image, where the real question is whether it's authentic or not. Social media is full of suggestion and innuendo, big claims that beg us to make inferences. Now, for me, the relevance of this image doesn't have anything to do with what we see, but again, what we don't see. For me, the question that arises is, what was this college student habitually putting into his body besides food? And is that a factor here? Remember, we're dealing with a young male at college who is also into furry fandom. This is what we know, and based on that, what inferences can we draw? So I'm not going to take it further than that. I will start going through the number 1, 2, 3 clues that we've all missed, and also continue looking at inferences in terms of the text. Are these texts fake? What inferences can we draw there? And how can we determine whether to trust that or not? And I'll be dealing with that in the next couple of days. If you're impatient to get to that analysis, it is posted beforehand on Patreon at patreon.tcrs, so you can head there in the meantime. Otherwise, thank you for listening. I hope you have a great weekend. And at least in terms of this stuff, please do take Superman's dad's advice.
I'm not given to wild, unsupported statements.